John Jones back in the news. You know, he retired, then unretired, then had the whole debacle with, allegedly driving a car. Maybe, maybe not. There was a chick in the car. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know what happened. Innocent until proven guilty in America. That's how we roll. But the boy John Jones is back in the news again. Regardless of whether you like John Jones or you hate John Jones, his next fight is going to be probably one of the biggest fights, if not the biggest fight in UFC history. Almost regardless of who he fights. Because every day for the last few months, damn near, or every week, rather, for the last few months, John Jones has been in the news. Everybody wants to see him fight. Everybody wants to see him fight Tom Aspinall. And John Jones wants to fight him at the White House. Dana White just came out and said he can't risk, something going wrong with John Jones at the White House. It's too big of a risk. He's not going to be on the card. Now, Dana is a master promoter. In my opinion, the only fighter the fight you need to put on the card is Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, period. USA versus England on Independence Day. That only makes sense if Tom Aspinall is still the champ by next July, which, there's no guarantee of that because there's a lot of dogs in that heavyweight division who are chomping at the bit to get their hands on Tom Aspinall, specifically Derek Lewis and Ciryl Gane. We don't know how he matches up with those guys. And we just got Marcus Almeida Buchecha is now in the UFC heavyweight division. One of the best, most decorated jiu-jitsu fighters in the world ever. So with that being said, there's a lot of things going on in that heavyweight division. Now we have a whole year until that fight card happens. Now, John Jones is training consistently for a year hard, preparing for that moment. That's a scary John Jones. In my opinion, I believe John Jones wrecks Tom Aspinall. I've been watching him for too long. I've been seeing him do his thing for too long. The dude is a mastermind. He reminds me of like Achilles in the movie Troy. The tactics he used, how he's able to, on the fly, switch his game plans and just beat fighters, even in his worst night. I'm probably going to get some hate for saying that John Jones is a great fighter, which he clearly is. But Dana White knows how to promote fights. And Dana White knows, and he has analytics that show John Jones versus Aspinall is probably the biggest fight you can make in MMA right now. Potentially bigger than John Jones versus Francis, just because all of the talk around this fight makes it so big, And the fact that people want to see John lose, and they think Tom's the guy to do it. Who knows? Only time will tell. But John Jones just turned 38. Everybody knows that heavyweight, you're in your prime, pretty much in your 40s at heavyweight. There's been so many heavyweights who have done great in their 40s. Randy Couture, Derek Lewis, Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia was pretty good back in the day. Brock Lesnar. I mean, there's a bunch, George Foreman, there's a bunch of them. Stipe Miocic, there's a bunch of them. Heavyweight is an older man's weight class because the style and the game is completely different at heavyweight. So I believe John Jones is coming into a new prime, based on his performance with Ciryl Gane and Stipe. We can only judge you from your last fight. And John Jones' last two fights were amazing. When he beat Ciryl Gane, that was a special moment. Just to see him, his first time at heavyweight, to go up there and just wreck Ciryl Gane. That was wild. And then when he beat Stipe, it was just an absolute decimation, of one of the best fighters ever in the sport. So I personally believe this fight with Tom Aspinall or whoever is the champion at that time is going to happen. And I believe it's going to be John Jones at the White House. It only makes sense, as time goes on, I can see Trump actually saying like, no, we want Jones on the card, And yeah, you got to let Jones be a wild boy. That's how we're going to get the best fighter, period. That's how we're going to, we want John Jones wild. That's how we're going to get the best John Jones. Do not try to put John Jones in a box because he's fighting at the White House. If you try to put John Jones in a box, he's not going to perform the way that we want to see him perform. We want to see the wild man John Jones, period, versus Tom Aspinall. That's what I want to see. You know, if he gets locked up or something, or he does something before the event, hey, fuck it, he's ready to go. You know, every single time he's done something and he had a fight, he's had an incredible performance. So I'm trying to see John Jones versus Aspinall. I'm not trying to hear nothing else at the White House. That's the only fight to make, you know. And if this was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it would have been great to see Michael Bisping versus Dan Hendo at the White House. With that, when Hendo dropped the H-bomb, not talking Truman, not talking Harry Truman, I'm talking Dan Henderson, the H-bomb, bop, on Michael Bisping at UFC 100. Now that would have been incredible if that happened at the White House for a main event. Some all-American dude like Dan Henderson knocking out Michael Bisping, the loud-talking, brash, British dude, you know. But I'm so proud of where the sport is at, and you know, there's so many good fighters. You know, a lot of the fighters from the older generation are retiring now, and I think the sport's in a good spot. You know, I think this White House event is going to be such an incredible event, and you have to have John Jones on it. It would be a crime not to have John Jones on it. You have to have Conor McGregor on it. It would be a crime not to have McGregor on it. You know, you gotta, maybe even Ronda Rousey might come back and say she wants some of the action. You know, this is a special event. And I think you're going to see a lot of people come out the woodwork for this event, you know. But one thing I do know, the John Jones versus Aspinall fight today is the biggest fight you can make in MMA. And I'm gonna bet on it that John Jones will be fighting at the White House event next year.